Hello and welcome to this webinar from Project Edward on smart enforcement, safer communities. My name's James Luckhurst and I'll be with you for the next 60 minutes to discuss this very important topic. Now, Manchester's new speed enforcement camera systems mark a major step in reducing road collisions and improving community safety. Today, Chief Inspector for Safer Transport Ronald Nielsen from Greater Manchester Police, Nadeem Mohammed from Transport for Greater Manchester and John Piper from Jenoptik join me to share how enforcement technology, informed policy and community engagement are working together to encourage safer driving across the Greater Manchester area. And I would say you are all very welcome to join us. Now, if you're watching this, the chat function is open, so please share your comments and questions. We will deal with those towards the end of the programme. But meanwhile, let's get straight on. Why don't we start by getting to know each of you, hearing a little bit about who you are and what you do. Start with you, Chief Inspector. Tell us a bit.
Sure. So my name's Chief Inspector Ronnie Nielsen from Greater Manchester Police, and I oversee the Central Ticket Office, which is obviously to deal with camera enforcement across the whole of Manchester, and also the Serious Collision Investigation Unit.
Nadeem.
Hello, my name is Nadeem Mohammed. I'm the Safe Roads lead at Transport for Greater Manchester, and my work largely involves coordinating and stakeholder relationship management within our Safe Roads partnership.
And John.
I'm John Piper. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director at Jenoptik UK, and we were fortunate enough to be awarded 2 tenders for provision of speed enforcement systems throughout Greater Manchester, both spot speed systems and average speed.
Let's begin and try and think then about what policy objectives shaped the decision to invest in these new enforcement cameras for Greater Manchester. Who'll take that? Nadeem, will you? Is that for you?
So the mission for our organisation is really around safe and sustainable transport. In particular, trying to give people genuine options for alternatives to private car use. That's things like walking, cycling, using bus, tram and rail, for example. We also have our Vision Zero strategy, which launched last year, and we have an ambition for 0 deaths and life-changing injuries by 2040. And we also understand that in a lot of our areas where there's deprivation, we have lower car ownership in a lot of households, and people rely on either walking, cycling or public transport, and obviously those people are more exposed to road danger on our road network, and that was one of the reasons or the thinking behind the safety camera project.
Ronnie Nielsen, can I come to you and just let's get a flavour of roads policing across Manchester then. Are there some specific challenges? Is it the same as any other city?
I think we have a whole host of challenges. Speed, crucially, is one of the main factors. In terms of when we look at casualties, speed is one of the main factors in terms of the cause, but also the severity of incidents that we deal with. And our focus is on dealing with that as one of the key objectives for us. So it's really important that we try and tackle that across the region. We work hand in hand, obviously, with Nadeem and amongst other partners as well, and local authorities as a kind of holistic approach as to how we tackle that.
Let's just talk about the partnerships that you need, because it can't just be police, it can't just be TfGM. So who else is involved and what do they contribute?
We have local authorities as well, so we've got that local knowledge, the people that live and breathe and work in those areas. Bringing them all together with that localised knowledge about the area falls under what we call a speed management group, which meets on a regular basis. So we've specifically formed to task and deal with that as an issue. So having those local people that are responsible day in, day out really helps that view from the coalface, as it were, which helps us to understand where the threat and risk is.
John Piper, let's talk about technology then. What were the technological innovations and features in the camera systems compared with older models? Why were they key to this project, and how important was the accuracy and connectivity?
So what I would just touch on sort of Ronnie's previous comment is that from our perspective, both in tendering for the project and subsequent delivery of the Spot Speed project in particular, that clear understanding of what the ultimate ambitions were and that very much connected approach from all involved made our life as a delivery partner that much easier. It also made it clear from our point of view what benefits, the benefits from our technology could be. One of those is that it's an ANPR-based system, so everything that Jenoptik provide is ANPR-based. So you get reliable, regular data, all video-based, And we've always designed our systems to try and be as streamlined as possible to enable a greater array of different installation options. So whilst the authorities had a very clear idea as to where and why, we were hopefully able to bring an additional bit of flexibility as to making sure that those particular sites and routes that had been identified could be addressed with our technology.
You've been around a fair while. Let's just see how technology has evolved since the early days of these cameras.
Yeah, so one primary, if you look at some of our average speed systems, so in terms of home office type approved average speed systems, we've been providing those for over 20 years. The size and shape has improved over time. Technology allows things to become in smaller boxes. Our vector camera, which is our primary delivery camera, is now much smaller, and as I previously mentioned, opens up an array of installation possibilities. We also add in from a Vector SR, which is the spot and red light, it's non-invasive. So from designing and installing sites, we're not integrating into the carriageway. We're limiting the amount of effect we have on the roadside. So again, it just makes sure that where areas want to be addressed by the authorities, our technology is allowing and enabling that.
Now, the title of this discussion is Safer Communities and Smart Enforcement. Let's focus on the community side of things. Nadeem, can you help us with that? And how are communities informed and engaged in the decision-making process around where cameras are placed?
So we've recently refreshed our safety camera criteria that we use to determine and assess applications or requests for new safety cameras. And part of that criteria includes support from within the local community. So, for example, it could be petitions, it could be representation through or from MPs and councillors on behalf of constituents.
And in terms of buy-in from communities, tell me about how you achieve that and what the barriers might be.
So when we developed our draft Vision Zero strategy, we did actually carry out quite a lot of public engagement. And I think one of the things that the public was telling us was that actually speed is a very big concern for people from the feedback that we had, and also that people seem to prefer average speed to spot speed as well, which links in with our project.
What sort of road makes it suitable for the average speed system?
The sorts of roads, so some of our routes are based on replacements of the existing spot speed. So we may have routes that have several spot speed cameras along the route. And one of our wishes was to, obviously there was support from within the community and local authority to retain the equipment, but we also wanted to avoid obsolescence, and we felt that there were greater benefits to be had from rolling out average speed on a sectioned route rather than spot speed. I think from the feedback we had from public engagement through Vision Zero was that actually people understand that drivers do slow down for a spot speed camera and then speed up again and drive off. So it was very much around some of the feedback that we'd had from local community, and also some of the attitudinal surveys that the DFT have done around safety cameras and public attitude towards the equipment.
Chief Inspector Ronnie Nielsen, then let's just touch on two words, trust and transparency. Do they come up a lot in conversations that you have, or are they actually something that's sort of been sorted and we can move on because there is all of the trust and all of the transparency that you would want?
It's really important that we've got to be open and transparent. As a police force within an area, we've got to be open and accountable to the public. Part of what we do here in terms of approaching this with our enforcement, we've got the cameras, they're painted bright yellow. It's not about being covert or sneaky. It's about saying to the public, this is it, it's here, and it's in these locations and you can see it there. Being open about what we do, there's no covert nature in terms of the enforcement, and it's about being held to account by the public as well. They rightfully expect us to be enforcing speed on the roads. As Nadeem's already commented on, we've got numerous complaints about speed. It's really something that the public care about. We know from the number of people involved in collisions, it's a real underreported thing that people go through here is the issues on the roads. People want safe speeds on our roads, and we can hopefully enforce that by being open and transparent. Our bright yellow cameras, we don't operate any covert officers in terms of that speed enforcement, so people can see what we're doing so that we can then be accountable to the public, but also it's about that deterrent effect as well. So it's almost like a two-tier approach. We will enforce, but also by being visible, it's about that deterrence as well.
Social inequality is the next topic, Nadeem, if we can. So tell me how speed cameras help reduce social inequalities by protecting vulnerable road users such as pedestrians, cyclists, children.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. So within road safety, there are very well established and researched links between deprivation and road safety. People who live in deprived areas tend to be overrepresented in terms of collisions and casualties on the road network. And one of the things I touched upon before was around deprivation and the level of car ownership. We do have some wards in Greater Manchester where the level of car ownership can be less than 50% across that ward within households. This means that people do rely much more on walking and cycling and using public transport. Obviously, you do need to walk or cycle to access public transport. And what we have found is, and I think this has been acknowledged within the public health sphere, is that the speed and volume of traffic does inhibit how people take up walking and cycling and how they feel safe when they're moving around. And obviously, it's something that we do need to address, and we don't really want people to be at a greater risk of being killed or seriously injured purely because they rely more on walking or cycling.
Now, you have certain priorities. So how does data from the upgraded cameras inform local and regional policy and the decisions you make about speed management and the priorities for road safety?
So there are a few different ways, and it is an area of further development, but certainly we have an opportunity to gather the speed data to see whether the system is doing the job that it's intending to do. There are also other considerations and other feedback we've had from members of the public, which is actually that traffic can actually move more smoothly through the road network as well, which is a supplementary benefit, but it's also something that has a benefit to the environment as well.
And if you were to take us for a walk down one of your streets, would we see those benefits firsthand?
It depends what time of the day. So certainly one of the bits of feedback that we do have from members of the public when we first announce a new system or an upgraded system going in is that they feel they can't really do much more than 10 or 15 miles an hour, which is usually during peak traffic periods. But you will see a difference certainly during free flow conditions as well. And one of the things we have noticed on some of our busier routes is that some people have said that actually there's a lot less road rage because people are all doing more uniform speeds and there's less kind of competition for road space on the commute into work or school or wherever it is they're going.
Would that resonate with you, Chief Inspector? Less road rage?
Absolutely. It's something I think we can all associate with when we've sat behind the wheel ourselves, and I, for one, have certainly felt the same about the conduct of other people, certainly on the roads. But it's really important to have a credible speed enforcement as part of our wider strategy within Greater Manchester. What we're looking at is the transport-led growth in Manchester. It's part of a policy that we've all signed up to as part of the combined authorities. And by having credible enforcement, creating safer roads, it's enabling young people to be more mobile across the whole of the region. So, for example, to access work, to access education, and the fact that there's safe means to do so is really important. And obviously, enforcing and tackling speed is really key to delivering that.
I should say, I suppose, just adding this in, that I can remember spending 5.25 hours in Manchester at an average speed of probably no more than 4 or 5 miles an hour. I was running the marathon and it took me a very long time, but compliments to the organisers of the Manchester Marathon because it was just the most amazing event. So just a little shout out for that. I will be signing up for next year's.
Well, stop the press. I've already signed up for it. I'll see you on April. And in that case, I'll see you there.
And
no pressure.
Followed by a very large meal in Akbar's, which is one of my favourite places. But anyway, moving on from there, John, you've heard what Ronnie and Nadeem have been talking about. How's that resonating with you, and how does it compare with kind of feedback you might get from other cities where there have been similar installations?
So we've had sort of a strap line attached to our delivery of average speed systems called sort of safer, smoother, greener, fairer. But it's more than just a tagline. So the idea being, and we've done various bits of research to evidence this, is that exactly as Nadeem was saying, average speed do harmonise the speeds of the vehicles travelling from point A to point B or beyond. And that has multiple benefits, both in terms of the reduction in road rage potentially, because everybody is more standardised in their speed and therefore it becomes a safer and nicer driving environment. And that's not necessarily easy to sort of prove statistically, but we've done various sort of investigations to get some anecdotal evidence of drivers that were driving on a particular route to work prior to speed cameras being installed, and then after average speed, and they are enjoying, and not only are they finding it more relaxing to get to work in this example, but actually the reliability of their journey time increases as well, which also lowers stress if you've got a clear idea of when you're going to get to your destination. Additionally, we've done previous research that average speed and the harmonising of speeds across vehicles can have some environmental benefits. So it's really nice to sort of hear that some of those things that we've obviously been preaching as a company over the years are starting to manifest from the roots and the ideas of our systems being installed throughout Greater Manchester.
Let's look at the wider picture then, because it's a pretty tough target that you've set yourselves. Just remind us of what it is. It's 0 by 2040.
Yeah, so it's a vision for 0 deaths and serious life-changing injuries by 2040. And we also have a interim target to halve that figure by 2030. So it is very ambitious, but it does then focus our partners to make sure that we're all pulling in the right direction.
I'll share something interesting with you. We were talking to 2 people from Helsinki who managed to get 12 months without a single fatality. I mean, that 800,000 people live in the metropolitan area of Helsinki, and they did 12 months without a traffic fatality, which was unheard of for them, and they were so pleased. And then in the month of August, there were 4. And the conversation there was about, do we need you? What do we do? What do we have to change? Or are we actually needing to just hold our nerve and keep going on, to keep the course firm as we've established? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that,
I think
how you react to
it does resonate. It does resonate with me. I think when you look at collision and casualty statistics, I think one thing that I have come to realise through my kind of career experiences, they should be viewed as more of an outcome indicator rather than a performance indicator. And one of the things we're actually doing is trying to develop a suite of performance indicators that sit underneath the actual collision and casualty figure, which is obviously an outcome indicator to try and measure what's going on. So be it speed, seatbelt and mobile phone compliance, for example. There's lots of different things that we can look at to try and see how we can influence them. Obviously, particularly things like fatalities, they're very rare, random, multi-factor events, and sometimes it can be quite difficult to predict when something happens. So, for example, the Helsinki example you gave, it's fantastic that they had no fatalities in 12 months, but it's obviously quite easy, outside of that period to have something we would call a statistical blip, which is you have small numbers, and I don't think it should put people off the concept of aiming for 0 deaths. I think we should still keep trying. It's the right thing to do.
Chief Inspector, let's look at performance, not output indicators then. To what extent can your officers be out there enforcing the Fatal 4, the Fatal 5, whatever you want to call it, but is there seatbelt enforcement going on and mobile phone and speed enforcement by officers, as well as what we're here to talk about with the cameras?
Speed's just one factor. Like Nadeem just talked about there is a whole complex picture behind every fatality or every serious collision. We know that there is a whole host of factors that we've got to tackle. So think it's like our Swiss Army knife of options. You pull out your whichever blade for whatever function you're dealing with. Speed's one element of it, part of our toolkit. So those whole host of other issues, we work as a partnership dealing with road layout design. We look at, for example, the review meetings we now have for vehicle investigations, where we've been partners around a table to sit and discuss issues, where we see it from different points of views. We know as a police, we don't know everything. And the fact that you've got to sit around a table and you've got to have some awkward conversations at times and challenge some of the perhaps maintenance regimes, or what would the issues have been on the roads, or what the causal factors were. But we have good conversations and we come up with solutions, and we look at what we can do for prevention in the future, because ultimately far too many people are dying on the roads. Not enough people are actually acknowledging that in terms of the public conversation. More people die on the roads than knife crime and terrorism combined, yet nobody seems to grab that traction on it. So it's something that we're very focused on.
So how do you see enforcement playing a role in the future in shaping cultural attitudes towards safer driving?
We've got to have credible enforcement. Without enforcement, it's one of the strongest levers for changing driver behaviour. A fear of sanction or punishment is something that causes people to behave in certain ways. We've seen that with the compliance at camera sites, which has helped lower speeds, for example. We also need to make sure that we are fair and ethical in how we target and enforce as well, because if we don't do that, we lose both the confidence of the public and we lack that credibility then.
Nadeem, looking ahead then, how can technology and policy work together to evolve and make safer roads a kind of sustainable community outcome?
I think one of the things we are exploring at the moment is the use of connected vehicle data. So this is data that comes from vehicles, and I think traditionally we've relied on collision and casualty data, and that is still probably the best single source of data that we have. But looking beyond that, we need to look at how we can identify road danger through the connected vehicle data, and therefore how we can address it better and use that to influence policies and strategies about how we go about doing things. For example, whether it's trying to help the police with some intelligence that they can then take away and independently look at how they can prioritise their deployment. And from our perspective, it might help us to look at how we can build an infrastructure pipeline, not just safety cameras. Safety cameras should be a last resort, but other infrastructure improvements on the network, how we can better target them to try and anticipate where the danger is rather than wait for a collision to happen.
And John, then, emerging technologies, and we've heard a little bit already, but vehicle to infrastructure communications, predictive enforcement, what's on your radar that could help transform speed compliance and road
From
safety?
Jenoptik's point of view, we are sort of specialised in enforcement systems. So through all the change in the makeup of vehicles towards actually connected autonomous vehicles, there will always be, I imagine, from the perspective of the police and others, there's the what if that doesn't work, what if something happens? And our specialism is trying to provide technology solutions to capture and potentially enforce against that what if. At the moment, beyond our known speed enforcement red light systems, we're also investigating and developing, as you previously mentioned, solutions that could capture in-cabin offences such as mobile phone usage and seatbelts. And that's a sort of a step along the chain of what a technology provider could provide the tools to hopefully allow police and road authorities to implement the strategies and deal with the issues that they believe exist.
Let's give you each a wish then to conclude this. Nadeem, what would be your one wish that would help you achieve the 2040 target?
I think it's having consistent medium to long-term engagement with the public around the reason for Vision Zero and some of the things that we need to do to try and achieve that vision of zero deaths.
Chief Inspector Nielsen.
I think it'd be an appreciation for people to see the real harm that comes from road casualties and the terror that it puts in people, the fact that there's so much harm on the roads, and to get a real understanding of that as the reason why we do what we do. There's a real public good to be had here in terms of increasing safety on the roads and ensuring we've got that sustainable transport. I think to the 1,700 people that die a year nationally, there's families, there's a wider circle of people that are affected that aren't talked about, and there's some real harm that's caused, and I'd really love that the public become more aware of that and consider it more when thinking about their driving behaviours.
And John Piper.
So in relation to our systems that are installed and being installed across Greater Manchester, I'm hopeful that the safety benefits that we certainly believe will be seen are observed and continue to be observed over the coming years. And then wider afield, as I mentioned earlier, the clarity of vision, excuse the pun, but the clarity of planning around what Greater Manchester have done over the last 2 years, from my perspective, dealing with other contracts in other parts of the country, there are lots of lessons that I feel could and should be learned to improve road safety across the UK.
And that just about concludes the recorded part of this webinar. We'll be looking at your comments and questions in just a moment. Let me summarise. The overall Vision Zero safety strategy is aided by the safety camera upgrades, not only about enforcement, but also about building safer, fairer communities across Greater Manchester. By linking technology with policy, education and engagement, the partnership between Greater Manchester Police, Transport for Greater Manchester and Jenoptik demonstrates how innovation can drive cultural change in driving behaviour while prioritising the safety of all road users. Thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me, and we can crack on. Let me have a look in the chat function and see how busy that is. There's okay. Let's go straight away. So can I just confirm that John and Ronnie and Nadeem are all there to help us out here with some questions? I've got a few here as well. So just make sure that all the things that you said, all of you, in that recording a couple of weeks ago still stand. There's nothing that you want to correct or update on. You're all happy with that, I hope.
Indeed.
Good. Right. So let's talk. I'll put this to Ronnie. Nadeem, is Nadeem here? I can't see Nadeem at the moment. Are you there, Nadeem?
Yeah, I am, yes.
Ah, brilliant. Okay. So this may be for you or for Ronnie. Is there monitoring evaluation work linked to the cameras? For example, data on incidents or speed before and after cameras have been installed?
Yeah,
It's a really
good
good
question.
Oh, you beat me there, Nadeem. Go on, you go first.
Sorry, Ronnie, I didn't see you there. There's been quite a long lead into this project, and we are still going through implementation. But we did, a colleague did arrange to collect data before we actually started any of the work on speeds, and to a certain extent, where possible, potentially walking and cycling activity as well. Since we undertook that exercise, we are now starting to experiment with connected vehicle data. That's data that comes from vehicles, so it is something that we are going to be looking to monitor. And I think the very early signs for some of the earlier installations show that there have been reductions, but we really need to wait until we've got a reasonable amount of post-implementation data to be able to do a proper job on that one.
Yeah, just adding to that, it's a really good point, Nadeem, that you raised there, because when we look at the deterrent effect, we can look at the speed of a vehicle at that location where that camera is. But what we can't measure, no matter what data we have, is the effect on the wider area and the behaviours and compliance. So we've got to sometimes use professional judgment on that. The connected vehicle data is great. You're seeing G-forces of vehicles. We can see the how they brake on approaching a camera, for example, and then how they speed up away from it. So we can see the compliance at the actual location itself. But what the wider effect is and how that translates to casualty reduction is a more harder link to make.
Thank you very much. There's a question I've got in here before we return to the meeting. It's just to reflect on smart. What the definition of smart enforcement. John, do you want to give us your take on what makes something smart in this regard?
Well, I think primarily smart is going to be effective, and obviously effective can cover a number of things. Going back just one area of smart from our systems, because they're ANPR based, there is additional data that can be recorded and used, anonymous data to identify certain trends. So speed profiles is something that we can provide from our system, so we can understand if they are having the desired effect over shorter or longer periods of time. But additionally, as I said, smart needs to be effective, and making sure that it works within the environment that it's being utilised. We're confident that these general speed systems have the desired effect in terms of lowering speed and improving safety, but it's got to be beyond that. And then from a technology provider, we certainly add things to make it smarter. So simple things that our cameras cover bi-directional. So all of a sudden, if you're designing a road safety at a particular location, you haven't got to worry about multiple cameras to monitor each direction. We can smartly do that from the camera itself. And there are other things that we've added over a period of time with our systems, one such as infrared illumination, which we synchronize with the cameras. So that is improving the quality of nighttime images for policing purposes, reducing the need for bright white light flashes, and also doing that in a manner that reserves as much energy as possible, because our separate illuminators and the cameras are synchronized through an additional technology. So these are some of the areas that we try and make our products as smart as possible.
A comment on smart from Ronnie and Nadeem, maybe?
Yeah, well, smart is one of these words that seems to be banded everywhere. It's stuck on many things. You even see it on a bottle of water. It's often used to sell things. And however, smart for me, let's do what works for the right reasons. It's about ensuring you've got the right blend of enforcement, the right people at the right place, doing the right things. And rather than reacting to casualty data, it's about being ahead of it, looking at where that threat and risk is, make sure we deploy. That for me is sort of smart enforcement. Yeah, I know it is the association with technology, but it's about doing the right thing.
Nadeem. Oh, you're on mute,
Apologies.
sir. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Someone had to do it, didn't they? Someone had to.
Yeah, I think I'd just to reiterate the point that Ronnie made. I think we are, and everybody needs to get better at being a bit more proactive rather than reactive. So it's trying to take a look at what the data is telling us to look at how we can improve enforcement across the network.
I'll put this, you could probably read it in the chat. I've seen roadside signs telling me that a lower speed is in place for environmental reasons. Does this mean people driving zero emissions vehicles are exempt from the lower limit, or is it a flawed form of wording? Any thoughts on that? I don't know where that exists, but I'm passing that on for comment.
It's a really good question, and I think it links into a few areas. I have seen it around, and you think, whilst looking at it from a sort of taking the professional, my work aside, look at it, you think, oh, that's nice, that's for the environment, that's great. However, it does obviously raise the question of the vehicles, and is it two-tiered enforcement? So are you punishing unfairly people that can't afford an electric vehicle and these other matters? So it's about what's fair and right. So it's a difficult one. I think it's one for the politicians, but a speed limit, when it's in place, it applies to everybody. So yeah, I think slower speeds solve most of the problems, and if we can bring speed down, we solve a lot of issues.
And there's something here that EVs also use more energy at higher speeds. More energy, what, than ICE cars, I assume is what Andrew there means. But thank you very much for that. Now, there's something else from here. You all get the chance. I mean, this is about Manchester, a case study that's been brilliant, but you all get the chance to go to lots of other cities. What do you think, each of you, as you walk through cities and the impact that their own systems have? Because I'm sure you don't operate in isolation, just doing your thing. I'm sure you'll have thoughts on the things that work that you could nick from other cities in the UK or abroad. John, I mean, Jenoptik goes around the world. So where are some really good examples that you've seen?
I mean, it's fair to say from a speed enforcement road safety point of view, the UK have led or been one of the leading countries for a period of time. One of the areas that personally would be useful is if we can, and this is an ongoing topic, sort of modernize some of the underlying legislative issues around the use of technology, so that in our example as an ANPR camera manufacturer, the camera that we deploy by the roadside can do multiple things, can send data to multiple locations, and there could be a far wider ranging holistic benefit to what is being captured at the roadside. That could inform journey time systems. You can do other potentially enforcement. We're not quite there in the UK yet. It's an ongoing market topic to try and improve that, but that would be something when I look at systems that we are deploying in other countries, and I personally worked on some systems we have in Lithuania, in the Baltics, where very, very similar hardware that we're talking about is deployed across Manchester, is providing journey time information, spot speed, average speed, tax enforcement information, and general updates from exactly the same hardware, because it's just permitted to be used slightly differently. So that would be one area where, looking outside of the UK, I think there could be benefits brought back into.
I think there's the whole notion of sharing different databases is, I know that Lithuania and particularly Estonia do that very well indeed, in that you're not just on one database for your driving license, but the same database will get all your tax information and everything. So it's that might be a concept of smart. Okay, Ronnie, where have you been and thought, yeah, that works, I wouldn't mind that in Manchester?
It could be controversial, this. San Francisco and automated vehicles. Speed, it eliminates speed as an issue. That comes with a whole host of challenges. It comes with a lot of opinions on it. But having seen those vehicles, I've even given them a bit of a test. You edge towards the pavement, you see, is it braking or what? And I was surprised and shocked in equal measure as to how effective they were. If we're going to be really big and bold about what will work, well, if we've got automated vehicles, it eliminates the driver, which is the one responsible for the speed and the lack of compliance. I know it's a bit of a leap, but it's also, and for many people this isn't popular either, but the increased use of public transport as well. So within the M60, so the ring road around Manchester, I'd love to see public transport free within that entire circle in the inside, and that would have a huge impact. Obviously, it cause a massive cost to the economy, but we've got to be big and bold about what works. And if people aren't using cars, well, it eliminates the danger from one extent. But I know it's not going to be popular with many. But these are probably solutions and things that I've seen which were a few years away, I think. But having seen that trial in San Francisco, it was incredibly impressive. By the way, it wasn't taxpayer funded. I was on holiday, just so you know, in case there's any questions regarding that.
Thank you very much, Ronnie Nielsen. Nadeem, you may see the post from Tim Gibbs to you, is that something we can just have a look at? Figures may prove to be similar to those from independent figures from Auto Speed Watch, where users have monitored pre and post implementations, both with spot speed and average speed across nearly 200 installations. Each situation proves different, but typical 36 mile an hour average to 28 mile an average in a 30 mile per hour zone. Oh, I've lost it because it's just jumped. Tell me what your thoughts are on that. That from Tim Gibbs. Nadeem, it was pointed in your direction.
Yeah, I think one of the points he made was that each situation is different. I think we don't have 200 installations, but certainly it would be interesting to take a look at that. But I think some of the monitoring that we've done in the past does show reductions in before and after. I think one of the things which is probably a little bit more difficult to take into account is regression to the mean. Certainly when we do draft business cases for these sorts of projects, one thing we do try to do is to take into account some of the research that's out there and that does take into account the phenomenon of things like regression to the mean as well.
And a response that this is really interesting, that it's only a minority of speeders that cause the greatest threats. So what are ways of making sure that they can be brought to book? Because I think if that comes through Community Speed Watch, I think it's quite difficult, but I'm not sure. But I think that there are kind of limits, or there are rules to follow about, you know, when somebody gets a visit from the police or what happens. But they can, you know, I hear from Hampshire and from locally to me that, you know, a small number of people continue to do the biggest offences. So what do we do then, Ronnie Nielsen? How do we go after the ones who are doing most of the offending?
It's about looking at what we're doing and seeing if it works or not. So the first step is being honest with ourselves about what we're doing and does it work. So we reviewed a lot of what we do in Manchester, and within policing, we're really comfortable looking back at what we do and sticking with what we've always done, and can be hostile to change. But we've got to look at what and how we do. Make sure we're enforcing the appropriate speed limits, making sure that we're taking visible action, but also we've got to be better with the comms around these things. So, you know, everyone loves to see a speeding driver banned and these sorts of things, but it's about making sure that we've got that flow of communication with the public. That for us, we've certainly, since we've had a dedicated transport spot within our press office, we can share more of the good news. We're getting stories picked up on in terms of the Manchester Evening News, which is one of our local papers, which sells a lot of clickbait, so they love a good story or seeing someone getting their comeuppance, because there's a wider picture with this. It's not just one offence, it's many offences that people are involved with. These are careless behaviours which lead on to other things. The links we've had from speeding to other offences, from human trafficking, from all sorts, drug distribution, there's a whole host of things there, so it all links in. If we take care of those on the roads, then it prevents so much other harm as well. So I think I've got a lot more to do, and we're looking at how we can best use technology, the way, like Nadeem's alluded to, the connected vehicle data. We can do more enforcement, but we can do better enforcement where the real risk is, rather than waiting for someone to get hit by a car. So that's what we've got to do.
Nadeem, can I just ask you about deterrent? Because that, you know, if we could, deterrent is the thing we would all love the most, so that no one's getting tickets because they're all complying. Have you heard some good thoughts on driver behaviour change and techniques for, you know, changing minds, which was the National Police Chiefs Council strategy headline from a couple of years ago? What resonates with you in that regard?
I think one of the things that does resonate is a lot of drivers will get the opportunity to go on a speed awareness course or a driver improvement course, and I think they have been sort of demonstrated to be quite effective within a sort of 3-year range. And I think it's a less punitive approach. I think one thing we probably do need to do more of, we are doing it, is probably more communications and education campaigns as well, to try and encourage people and explain the reasons why it's important to stick to the speed limit.
Okay, let's sum up. I just want to spend a moment or two talking about outcomes, impacts, and sharing the lessons and looking ahead. So sum up, please, Chief Inspector Nielsen, then, from a police perspective, the impact, sum up the impact this camera system has had on driver behaviour.
It's brought down speeds at the camera locations, but more effectively, it's proved a good deterrent. So it's a step in the right direction with the right tools to get the job done. So yeah, happy so far.
And Nadeem Mohammed, what early results or trends have you seen in collision reduction since installation?
I think it's quite early to look at collision reduction. We have seen some decreases, but as I mentioned previously, we do need more data post implementation to be able to look at that. I think one of the really interesting things is some of the feedback we get from local residents when these sorts of systems are installed. So, for example, we have had the odd bit of correspondence saying, you know, people feel it's a different world now on their commute because it doesn't feel like so much of a rat race. And certainly people that live in the vicinity of where some of these systems are also very positive about how it's changed things like noise, for example, as well, and how they feel more safe. So sometimes it's just as important to think about how people feel about that as well as what the data is telling us.
John Piper, technology is evolving, mobility patterns are evolving. How do you ensure that you will adapt to the next kind of for the next few years with what you're doing?
Well, as you say, Jenoptik are an international company. We're present all over the world. We're learning what the trends in terms of road safety are and what's required. It's listening to customers. It's listening to entities like Transport for Greater Manchester, what they think is happening, GMP and all other customers, and being sort of as adaptable and flexible and quick to market with things that we think can help. It's an ongoing sort of challenge and objective for Jenoptik to try and introduce what we think could be useful, what we think can be of assistance. And we have ideas, we learn from other countries, as I mentioned, but I think, again, but from a UK point of view, it's that engagement with the wide array of road safety professionals and police partners that exist, and we're fortunate enough to work with every day, week and month.
One more then, for the same question to each of you. We heard in the recording about the wishes you might have. This is more the advice that you would give to representatives, your oppos in other cities looking to do what you're doing. Just give a piece of advice that would be useful for them. Ronnie Nielsen, please.
I suppose giving advice to colleagues, that's controversial. You know, no one's colleagues love more than being told what to do by somebody else, do they? And what to do, it's know the threat and risk on your areas. Have an appreciation for the harm that's caused. It's really simple. With so many demands, particularly on policing at the minute, we are in a state where we've got so many competing demands. But everything's a priority for us. There's so many things, and it's about realising this needs to be right up there. It needs to move a few of those other issues that we're focused on out the way because of that wider impact, those ripples that come from collisions and the serious incidents that we deal with on the road. So yeah, know your threat and risk in the area and make sure you've got resources allocated.
Thank you very much. Nadeem Mohammed, and a bit of advice for as we've mentioned.
Yeah, just reflecting on what Ronnie said, I think when we were looking at trying to develop this project a few years ago, the sources of data were quite limited, and I think things have moved on quite significantly now. We've talked about connected vehicle data, and I think certainly for people anywhere looking at this sort of work and planning what to do, I think is to take a look at what's available in terms of connected vehicle data to try and have a look at identifying the issues and come up with the best solution, really, and that ideally should be enforcement as a last resort. We should be looking at other measures as well that we can take before we get to the point of sort of fixed roadside enforcement, if you like.
Thank you. And from John, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mentioned it in the video. I mean, one of the reasons we're discussing this particular project is because it is a large example of the introduction of road safety enforcement technology. One part of it involved the upgrade of around 90 different cameras as a single project. That is a large project when compared to others across the country. And the planning that clearly went into it made, from a delivery partner point of view, much easier to align with that ambitious plan and deliver those systems in 12 months. And also, I mean, it sounds like a throwaway, but teamwork. So TfGM and GMP clearly working together to deliver their vision. That's represented by who's on the meeting today, but also the engagement with all the local authorities. There are 10 metropolitan metropolitan borough councils, there were other third-party stakeholders. So this was for us, and I believe for other areas across the country, a large project, and all of that preparatory work allowed the delivery to be as smooth as it ended up being. And if it can be done on this kind of scale, then clearly that level of preparation could be done in any smaller projects as well.
I'll just read out one thing to finish. It's really about changing social norms. This is from Tim Gibbs, to the acceptability of speeding. Whilst enforcement is important in the solution, it's not a problem that enforcement alone can fix. And I'm sure we will be revisiting that over and over again in the months and years to come. I think that wraps us up for today. So I'm really grateful to Chief Inspector Ronnie Nielsen, to Nadeem Mohammed, and to John Piper from Jenoptik for being on this panel for this discussion on smart enforcement and safer communities. It's been a great pleasure for me to be involved with it, and some great comments. This will be, the recording will be popped onto the Project Edward website within a day or two. I would just give you a shout out. I've just put it in the chat. The next event that we're doing is with the MIB on Tuesday, the 4th of November at 11 o'clock. The link is there, and that's looking at, it's previewing an uninsured driver initiative that will be taking place during November. So do join us for that if you can. Meanwhile, though, from everyone here at Project Edward, thanks so much for joining us, and we will look forward to talking to you again soon. So from me, James, it's bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.